is back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes, is going for it.
Oh my God! What a goal! And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. Well, guys, it is game 2 for our Philadelphia Union, and we're finally going to have our first home opener in 2 years, because as we all know, we were looking forward to that home opener last season after the LAFC game, and bam, league shuts down because of COVID. And so, as we know, the Philadelphia Union, they take on Inter Miami, who over the weekend had an exciting game against the LA Galaxy. Well, join me today to talk a little bit about the Galaxy game, all that drama Inter Miami has faced during the offseason, a little bit in season, and of course help us understand Inter Miami a little bit better. I would like to welcome on to the show a guy who knows all things about Inter Miami. He covers them for South Florida Sun Sentinel, Mr. Khobi Price. How are you doing, Khobi?
I'm solid, Todd. I'm solid. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you reaching back to me and us being able to record this episode before the game, because I tell guests all the time, whether it's play-by-play people or journalists, I'm like, look, I can go ahead on Wikipedia, I can go do a couple quick Google searches, and quote-unquote people sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I really don't know what I'm talking about. So it's like, it's always best to bring on people that cover these teams on a daily, that this is basically their job, whether I said, whether you guys write about it or whether it's people that actually call the game. So super excited to have you on the podcast, Khobi. And now I must say, before we talk about today's topics, that picture you posted on Sunday of you in that pink dress shirt and the
yeah.
Pretty dope.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As you can see, that was a one-time thing. I am sporting like a blue Nike basketball shirt. I know it's the audio platform, so people won't know, but just know that I am not rocking the same thing that you saw, I guess, I've been on Sunday. Yes. Much more chill and laid back. More in sweats. I'm chilling.
Absolutely. It's like, it's the home opener. Got to go all out for it, right?
Yeah, it's the home opener. You got to get snazzed up. And even if it is 90 degrees outside and you feel like, man, this is a regret. Why am I wearing this jacket? Why am I wearing long sleeves? Why am I wearing pants? Why am I not wearing shorts, I should say?
There you go.
Yeah, but no, it was definitely, I had to pop out, show off for the home opener. But I told them I'm wearing polos and jeans for the rest of the season, no matter what. So it's all good.
Absolutely. I don't blame you for that, because especially, the farther south you get down in Florida, the humidity, the heat, I can only imagine. But anyway, and he's like, yeah, you don't have to tell me. I've been doing this for 2 years now. And I was going to say, but anyway, this is Inter Miami's second season. And like I just said, this is year number 2 for you on the beat for Inter Miami. So do you mind telling everybody a little bit about your background, how you got into covering Inter Miami for the South Florida Sun Sentinel?
Sure. I moved down to Florida. That would have been September 2019, originally covering FAU football. And then also helping out with other beats. I covered Miami Heat as well in the NBA. And I think that would have been 3-4 months into it. My editor asked me if I wanted to cover soccer. We talked about it and wound up just kind of in January 2020, a couple months before the start of the season. I wound up taking over the Inter Miami beat. And that's kind of how, like, the shorthanded version of how it all came about. And ever since then, just been rocking with the team, covering the team, following the team, and trying to chronicle each step and everything they do. From kind of took over at a weird point, because like that's kind of when they start signing more players, and like they had a little bit of the roster figured out. But I think the month that I took over, that's when they signed Luis Morian. I think they might have signed like a week or two after. They had just brought in Diego Alonso as their first coach. They got Nico Fagal. They got Andres Reyes, who's now with the New York Red Bulls. So it was kind of an important time, because you could start to see the roster come together, the vision comes together. They just hired their coach. That was a big deal. So it was an important moment. And then be able to chronicle everything from that moment on, the season opener, the league shutting down or being suspended for, what was that, 3-4 months? It's been fun. A first home win, it's been a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is interesting. You just said that you were covering the Miami Heat and then college sports in general, I'm sure. So were you a fan of soccer before you took over this job, or did you know anything about soccer before, or was it just like, here you go, Khobi?
Yeah, no, I mean, I knew about soccer. I mean, I grew up playing it. I watched it. I had an idea of soccer. I didn't follow MLS that deeply. I was more follow internationally, just because. But I had an awareness of MLS. I've been to a couple of MLS games. I'm originally from the Midwest, so I went to a couple of Fire games back when they were before they moved to Soldier Field. So this would have been when they were in Bridgeview. I forget what the name of the stadium is now. I feel like it's like SeatGeek Arena now. That's not how I remember it.
Yeah,
that was new to me. I was like, whoa, okay. But yeah, I had an awareness. I knew about it, but I've obviously learned like tremendously, especially when it comes to like MLS roster rules and regulations and all that crap. I'm sure we're going to get into how MLS roster rules have specifically affected Inter Miami this year, the past 2 years, I should say. But that's honestly been one of the biggest things to learn. Yeah, learning about the game and the tactics and the X's and O's for sure. But the biggest thing has been continuously learning about new rules and regulations, especially since they want to add a couple every year or so. The U22, the way you can use GAM. I'm glad this is more of an MLS. I'm sure there's more of an MLS podcast because I can say GAM and everybody's like, oh yeah, I have an awareness of what GAM is. Say that outside of an MLS sector, they'd be like, what's GAM?
Yeah, what's GAM, TAM, JAM, you know, those
we got YAM now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that is very true. I mean, you got to love the MLS terminology. And yeah, I can only imagine trying to explain all those rules like yourself, you know. You try to explain because, like, obviously you have an audience that's going to read the newspaper and everything that are a fan of soccer, but then people that pick up the newspaper and everything, they might not be a fan of soccer. So you've got to try your best to also try to break it down to terms where they can also understand it as well. And yeah, trying to get into TAM, GAM, YAM, yeah, that could be a lot for people that have no clue about MLS terminology. But speaking of just last season, I mean, look, like I said, year 2 for you on the beat, and last season wasn't the way any of us planned for it to go. It was like I said, us Union fans were super excited because we finally get a home game after two seasons because of COVID. We finally get a home opener. Super excited for that. COVID shuts down the league. Everybody starts to panic, and I've got to imagine, you know, it was pretty hard for me to come up with content, but then for your job, a sports reporter, not only did soccer stop, but sports altogether stopped. So how tough was it for you personally to have no sports for those 3-4 months?
Here, because at one point, I would say in February, it felt like everything was happening, at least for me, because like it was recruiting season for college football. The Miami Heat, I just did a bunch of stuff for them January and February. Inter Miami's obviously, you know, playing preseason games. They're finishing out their roster, doing all that. And then they played 2 games. They lost to LAFC in the opener, lost to DC in their second game. And 2 days before their home opener, their true home opener, it gets shut down. Everything gets shut down. I started reaching, in terms of writing, I just reached to whatever I could write. I'm writing it, whatever I could. It did not matter, simply because there wasn't much going on. Just had to write whatever I could.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was tough, and I came up with a brilliant idea and came up with a Union quiz show and brought in a whole bunch of Union fans. I was like, okay, that's pretty good content, and then people liked it, so I brought it back again this season. But yeah, just super excited that the Union, Inter Miami, just MLS in general, they finally get to play a 34 regular season game schedule, because I started this podcast 2 years ago, 2019, I guess technically towards the end of 2019. So 2020, I was looking forward to that because I was like, yes, a full season of MLS, and nope, doesn't happen. But at the same time, too, I guess it all works out in the end, right? Because here we are in 2021. We get 34 games, and like you said earlier, we'll talk about everything crazy that happened in 2020 for Inter Miami in 2021. 2021, I think, is going to be a very, very interesting year for just MLS fans in general. But like I said, Inter Miami, they had their home opener on Sunday when they faced LA Galaxy. And for anyone who's listening to the podcast, if they didn't watch that game, what an exciting game that was, honestly. I know for Inter Miami fans, they lost that game because the game ended 3-2 to LA Galaxy. But I thought Miami, they had a lot of positives in that game, exciting moments in that game. Robbie Robinson scored just before the break, which if you're going to score a goal, you always want to score before halftime because for the other team, like that can mess up their tactics and everything. It's like, great, we're planning to go into the break tied 0-0, and then bam, here's a goal right before the break. It's like, great. Everything I had plans getting thrown right out the water. Galaxy tied up in the second half with Chicharito. Then Gonzalo Higuain scores a penalty to make it 2-1 Miami, and then right after that, I feel like the wheels fell off for the defense for Inter Miami, but especially in that third goal, that was it should have never been conceded. It was conceded, but just what are your takeaways from Phil Neville's first game in charge of Miami? Like I said, this game did have some bright spots, but in the end, Miami lost the game.
Yeah, you talk about the wheels falling off. That third goal, I went back to watch the match after it happened, and that third goal to me was just tire legs. Like you could see, and Phil Neville spoke about this the week leading up to the match against the Galaxy about, they had a couple of their games, a couple of their friendlies, preseason friendlies canceled because of COVID issues. And then I know there was also a conflict of schedule. So they only got to play, I think, really two preseason matches. And then they had squad matches, but that's not the same as playing against another team that you don't know. They also don't know you. So immediately, Phil Neville admitted that they weren't 100% match fit going into Sunday. And it could very much be seen, especially not even on that last goal. Yes, obviously on that last goal, I think it was like in the 82nd, 81st minute. Guys were tired. A couple subs already happened. But even when we got to like minute 60, you could see some guys starting to tail off a little bit. We asked about that after the match, and they had that Gonzalo Higuain PK, and Neville said, I thought we were still feeling good. We saw a little bit more in the tank, but obviously after that, I mean, that's when the Galaxy got 2 goals after that. So it was a lack of concentration, lack of focus, but I think a lot of that comes back to, or if not a lot of it, at least some of it comes back to, when the physical aspect starts to slip, so does the mental. Some things they do, you're not there as much as you could be. And so that's something that I was going into the match against the Union this weekend. I'm curious to see how that substitution pattern, at least for Inter Miami, changes, just because you see when the goals were scored, so you can kind of figure, those guys start to get tired. But from a positive standpoint, you would have to love what Inter Miami did in the attack. Just being able to build up play. Yes, they didn't dominate possession. I think it ended up being like 66 to 34%, something in that range. But even without having possession, so much of it, they were the more threatening team throughout the entire match, at least until you got to the very end. But even then, it wasn't like the Galaxy were outshining them from a chance creation standpoint. They were just weren't converting goals. They got one that was. Higuain was probably offside. We can admit that. We can admit that. But even then, you also got the PK from Pizarro, or Higuain after Pizarro got fouled in the box. And even before that, they were just creating shots. They were creating opportunities. They were getting to the points where they wanted to. But you getting 2 goals, that should be enough, especially when you're playing a game like that. But you have to be tighter. Maybe the substitutions could have happened earlier, but there were some positives, especially in the attack, but you can't lose that focus because we see what happens. Happened to them last year too, which is crazy enough, under a different coach.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad you just mentioned that because that's a great talking point to go into. So the former manager, if people aren't familiar, was Diego Alonso, who is the only manager to win 2 CCL championships with 2 separate teams. He's had a lot of success down in Mexico. It seemed like this was the guy that Inter Miami wanted from the start. I think I vaguely remember the ownership group saying, hey, look, we want somebody that can connect with the fans. Because, look, everybody knows down in Florida, it's a lot of Hispanics down there. And so I thought it just made sense to hire somebody like Diego, who's had a lot of success in his coaching career. And then they go out and after a year say, we're going to part ways with him. And then they bring in Phil Neville, who's had... some people that are fans of the women's game, international game, say, Phil Neville didn't do the best of jobs with the women's national team in England with the England's women's national team. I don't know. I'm not going to say he did or didn't because I don't watch too much international women's soccer, but I am curious from your perspective. Do you feel like the Phil Neville hiring was just David Beckham looking out for a former class of '92 teammate, or was this honestly the guy they wanted?
Actually, I was on a podcast before, and I was asked a similar question, and I think my answer is the same answer I'll give you. I'm trying to remember is that if they weren't teammates, if they didn't have the relationship, because it's not just being former teammates, they're business partners, they're close friends, they've known each other well. If they didn't have that relationship, I would be very surprised if this hiring was made. At the same time, those relationships, oftentimes relationships guide the hiring decisions, and not just because like I know this person. David spoke on this a little bit. He spoke on a little bit, and I can kind of tell what he's trying to say. There is a certain familiarity that he has with Phil that he may not have with Diego. The communication may not have been there with him and Diego. He may not have always known what Diego was thinking. He may not know the background. Like, all right, as an owner, as a GM, president, whatever, you want to at least have like an expectation of, I know what my coach is thinking. I know what my coach is going to do in the situation. I don't think him and Diego had that kind of relationship to the point where he can be like, things may not be going well, but at least I know what Diego's going to do about it. With Phil, even when things aren't going well, you would at least think David feels comfortable saying, all right, things may not go well in this match or in this week or this month, whatever, but at least I know what he's going to do about it just because we're cut from a similar cloth. I think that's where it breaks down. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's the only reason. I didn't watch England's women's national team. I watched them after Phil got hired and when his name got brought up. Yes, he did great. He did some good things there. Had some shortcomings towards the end, but overall probably positive, or at least had positive marks. But if you didn't have that relationship, like I said, I don't know if this hire is made. I actually doubt it. But it's not to say that it's not to say that he isn't going to do well. Because I don't think. Yes, that matters, but at the same time, it's not like it wouldn't be the first time this happens. It happens all over sports, pretty much in every sport. So I know other people raise eyebrows more than I did, but I'm just like, yeah, this happens. It happens a lot, and this probably isn't even the most, if you want to even call it egregious, even the most egregious case of this kind of thing happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I just know, like in the national media, like when they announced Phil Neville, everybody was surprised, and I mean. Yeah, I guess it is surprising in one hand because they just hit so heavily like they wanted a coach that could relate to the fans. And now I guess it's to be seen, can Phil Neville really connect to a wider group of people that are Inter Miami fans and just the area in general? But I don't know. I mean, look, I'm a Manchester United fan, so to see another former Manchester United player in the league, I'm all for it, right? And so, especially like being able to see those guys in person, yeah, I feel like that's the coolest thing. Whether it's Nani, I know Schweinsteiger was in the league a few years ago, Wayne Rooney, obviously, just like seeing these old Manchester United players, it's like, yeah, this is pretty cool seeing them, even though, you know, they might not be what they are, just seeing them in person, because it's like, you talked about watching international soccer, so you get it, seeing these guys on TV, it's like, yeah, I might not ever get a chance to go see them over in Europe and everything, but then to finally see them here in America, it's like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like, okay, look, I know I can't compare him to what he used to be, but it's still that player. They're still here right in front of my eyes. So it is pretty cool, even though, you know, Phil Neville's coaching Inter Miami and I support the Union. I still think it's cool.
I think that was so much of what these changes for Inter Miami was just making it something where it was more aligned, where they could feel more aligned in what they were doing. And that goes with Phil, because obviously Phil and David have their relationship, but also going with Chris Henderson as the sporting director, chief soccer officer. Henderson was the runner-up for the position before Paul McDonough got the job. So obviously there was some familiarity from that standpoint. Obviously Henderson's track record is much deeper and larger than Phil Neville's. I mean, he helped build one of the best dynasties of MLS since 2009, 2010. Yeah. So I think that's, when you look back on this offseason, or when we look back on the offseason, maybe a year or two from now, it will be reflective of they were trying to find something where they could be more in sync, something more comfortable, something more that everyone would be more in tune with one another. There wouldn't be as much, I guess, wouldn't be as much this.
Yeah, absolutely. And look. Like I said, the hiring of Diego Alonso, and it seemed like, this is a guy who could lead them to great success whenever they get into CCL, if they're able to qualify. Like, this just seems like a perfect hire, and then is gone after a season. And so, if that drama wasn't enough for people, Inter Miami go out and sign Matuidi to a TAM contract last season. MLS deems that Matuidi is actually a DP player, and Miami are not roster compliant because they have 4 DPs on their roster. So Miami buys out Pellegrini's contract, loan him to USL 1 side Fort Lauderdale to become roster compliant. MLS announces a few days ago that Inter Miami, they broke MLS rules last season with the signing of Matuidi. Don Garber comes out and announces sanctions will be coming in a few days. Now, that's a lot of things to break down. And so I guess we can start first with Pellegrini. This was a young Argentine winger coming from Estudiantes in Argentina, who Inter Miami apparently paid a transfer fee between $6 to $9 million. Inter Miami can't trade or loan him to another MLS team because they bought him out, The Athletic reported. And I guess the plan is for Inter Miami to sell him to another team in the summer, as that's when most teams in Europe and just around the world's transfer windows open up.
This is a lot to break down. Like I told you before the show, if I start shaking because of the PTSD from going all over this, then excuse me, because this is a lot. Yeah. So, and I also want to make this clear off top. Yes, these situations, the Matuidi situation, the Pellegrini situation, they're intertwined, but they're also very separate. So touching on the Pellegrini thing, it's really unfortunate, more so for him than the team, simply because, you move out of your home country for the first time at 19 years old. You come here with expectations for yourself, but also the expectations of a player for, let's be honest, not a whole lot of MLS teams spend $6 to $9 million on a transfer fee, especially for a young player that you may not know how they're going to pan out. And for him, now he's more than likely going to no fault of his own. Yes, he had an up and down, or not even up and down, just not satisfactory first season. But it's not like he's the first young player to not deliver on expectations in the first year, and then to have to basically be displaced. And now it's pretty much the writing on the wall is he's probably going to get transferred, and if not transferred, at least loaned to another team. Obviously, he has some power over the situation in that regard, but you didn't come here for that. You came here thinking, I'm going to be this big time player in Miami. I'm going to be this, that, and the other. And now, because of the situation that they are more responsible for, now I have to, now I have to figure out a whole new situation. And the 2020 for him was rough. Not performance wise, obviously getting away from home for the first time during the pandemic, things get shaken up, etc. But yeah, I feel for the kid. That's tough. From the Inter Miami standpoint, man, where do you want me to go with this? I'll let you. Where do you want me to go with this? There's multiple places I can go.
There is a lot, right? Look, I'm sure we could spend a whole podcast talking about this, and you've talked about this a lot, and you're like, I'm tired of writing about this. Like, I want it to be done. Like, he's technically not an Inter Miami player anymore. So honestly, like, we if you want to summarize, take it however you want, you can do that, because look, it is a lot. It is a lot. And I will say, look, I will post different articles in the show notes for people if they want to go ahead and read this and everything, because Khobi can honestly be here for another hour explaining all this.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do this succinctly. I'm looking at the time right now. I'm going to try to do it within 5 minutes for people who may need a little more background situation. So I'm going to try to do this the entire thing. So Matias Pelegrini, along with Julian Carranza, was Inter Miami. Those were the first few signings they made. Julian Carranza came on, big transfer fee, but he wasn't a DP. So remember that. Matias Pelegrini, big transfer fee, $6 to $9 million, as Paul McDonough told The Athletic in July 2019, counts as a young DP. They're building out the roster. Inter Miami signs their second DP, Rodolfo Pizarro, February 2020, and a couple months before the season starts. They go into the 2020 season with 2 DPs, Pellegrini as a young DP, and then Pizarro, obviously, as a senior DP. Season gets suspended, et cetera. We don't, the MLS back happens, we do that. I believe this was before before the season resumed, at least Inter Miami's season resumed on August 22nd, 2020 against Orlando City, they signed Blaise Matuidi, and like you said, on a free transfer, and like you said, they announced it as a TAM signing. They signed him using targeted allocation money. This is an MLS podcast. I'm sure everybody knows what that is, but just in case, that means that his salary, since it was a free transfer, his compensation would have needed to be somewhere between, let's say, $125,000 and like $1 million above that. So I had to be somewhere between that, in between that space. And then a month later, they signed Argentine striker Gonzalo Higuain as the DP. So you get 3 DP spots. They filled up those spots with, in order, Pellegrini, Pizarro. They signed Matuidi as a TAM guy, and then they signed Higuain. MLS, then they finished the season like that. Now, March 5th, MLS announces they're investigating the Matuidi signing, saying that they see if his roster compliant, basically saying that he may have received whatever compensation, like he should have been a DP. That's what they said. And obviously, a month and a half, I would say, passes. They announced that the Matuidi signing was not roster compliant, in the sense that he should have counted as a DP. And now, because they were not roster compliant last year, which they will receive punishment for, but because they weren't roster compliant last year, that also means they weren't roster compliant going into this season. That's why they had to drop Matias Pelegrini. They did not drop Matias Pelegrini or buy him out because that was not a punishment from last year. That was the aftermath of, well, yes, that's last year. We're going to handle last year. But for now, you must take care of 2021. You must get your roster right now. So that is why. That's not a punishment. That is not anything going back to 2020. That's just a pure 2021. Yeah, you guys weren't roster compliant last year, but get roster compliant this year. So that's why the Matias buyout happened. They still have him in the club, in the organization. He's still getting his MLS checks, etc. But he will not be on Inter Miami's roster for 2021, at least the MLS roster, and he probably will be either loaned, at the very least, probably transferred to another club, like you said, when the summer transfer windows open up. Going back to the Matuidi part of it, he will count as a DP for this season. So Inter Miami has their 3 DP spots filled with Matuidi, Pizarro, and Higuain. Awesome. So they're roster compliant for this year. But MLS is saying, well, you weren't roster compliant last year because Matuidi should have been a DP. And if Matuidi was a DP last year, like he should have been, you would have been able to sign Higuain to a deal reportedly for $7 million because he would have been a DP regardless, whatever. So there will be sanctions, like Don Garber told us at halftime for the Galaxy match. Now I'm getting a little bit more into speculation on my end. I'm expecting those sanctions to be pretty severe, pretty heavy on the sporting side, simply because it would be different if they signed Matuidi as a TAM guy and then they left it at that, like they didn't sign Higuain, because at least MLS would be like, yes, they should have clarified he was a DP or should have been a DP, but it's not like they would have just had 3 DPs on the roster at that standpoint, right? They technically, at least half the season, or at least 9 games that Higuain actually played, and probably more after his signing, they had 4 DPs on the roster, which is, I would argue, or I would imagine, is one of the biggest no-nos. Like, that's why the DP rule exists. So you don't have those kind of players, like a whole bunch of them. So I'm expecting the sanctions are going to be announced sometime this week. We're recording this. We're recording this on a Wednesday. So I guess a Wednesday evening. So between Thursday and Friday, we're going to find out what punishment Inter Miami would have for not being roster compliant last year. I hope that clears up everything, because I feel like some people thought they had to drop Pellegrini because of what was a punishment for last year. That's not the case. They had to do something about him because they weren't roster compliant going into this year. Yeah,
absolutely. And like Khobi said, it is a lot. So like I said before, Khobi explained all that, and you got it just under 5 minutes. So good job, Khobi. You said 5 minutes.
Oh, man.
So
there we go.
4 minutes. Good job. So I'll leave all the articles you guys can read about Pellegrini in the show notes and everything. And you already answered my next question about the sanctions and everything. Look, there's a lot of talks that people are like, oh, maybe there could be a points deduction into Miami. We've never seen that happen before in MLS. I still find that hard to believe. Fines definitely, and on the same time of that, same side of that, people are like, oh, but it's into Miami. They have so much money. Like, fine's not going to do anything to them. So I am curious to see what Don Garber is going to do, because a lot of MLS fans feel like, look, Don Garber loves the LA teams. He loves Atlanta United, and he feels like Seattle and Inter Miami are like his precious babies. Like, these are the franchises nobody wants to touch because they're looked at. One, Seattle's one of the most successful teams. LA's LA for a reason, and then Miami. Everybody wants to come down to Miami. It's like, look, like you said, there's a reason why there's DPs, because if David Beckham wanted to, he could get a full 11 and then bench players that count as DP players, because it's David Beckham in one, it's Miami. Everybody wants to be down in South Beach. And so it's not really hard for David Beckham to go out there and get DP players. And so there's reasons why those rules are in place.
Can I interject something real quick? It is kind of ironic that David Beckham's club is getting in trouble for a rule that was invented because of David Beckham.
I know.
The irony is there beautiful. I can't even lie.
It is. David Beckham's like, what? Like, I created this rule and now this rule's getting used against me? Like, what? Come on, Don. I thought we were cool. Like, I helped make MLS big in 2007, and now you're hitting me with this? Come on now. But yeah, I mean, all of us, all listeners, yourself, all the beat reporters for Inter Miami, I'm sure it's going to be a lot of content for you guys to write about once these sanctions come out. So you guys are like, just hit it with us already and we'll start typing away. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the other signings that MLS deemed that were okay for MLS rules. So they had a couple signings. We know Ryan Shawcross, former Stoke City center back, who knows what he has left in his tank. I always thought this was a weird move because, look, he's moving down to Miami. These English players aren't used to the heat. You have a guy who's near the tail end of his career and he gets signed to Miami. He was a good center back for Stoke all those years. I know he's been capped by England a couple times, but yeah, that's one that it's like, what's he have left in his tank? Like, is Phil Neville just going out after former England players like, hey, this is what we're going to make into Miami? Because they go out and announce that Kiren Gibbs for West Brom, the left back, is going to join in the summertime. Look, there's another English person. And it's like, are we going to see another Englishman? Or are we just going to make this Inter Miami team into former England nationals? I don't know, maybe, but you have a couple Argentinians on the team. You have a couple French players. I mean, that roster is so diverse. And then they go out and sign, I think the first signing they made this season was, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, Brazilian Gregore. That's three notable signings. Do you think Inter Miami has done enough with their signings, or do you think there's still work to be done?
The roster, obviously, I think they could have added probably a little bit more depth, a little bit more reliable depth. They are, I would say, a more top heavy team, but even the top heaviness with the team is not. I mean, you have Gonzalo Higuain. Obviously, like, he had not the best season last year. If he delivers, then a lot looks better just because he's Gonzalo Higuain. But I thought they might try to add a left winger. Over the off season, they did not actually move Robbie Robinson to that position, which he got his first within his career, so at least he's getting off to a good start. He actually looked better and more comfortable there than he did at forward all last year. But I did like overall their signings. If I had to assign a grade to the off season, I'd probably give it a B in terms of the players that actually came in. Gregore is the biggest one to me. After watching the team last year, they didn't have that that stopper in the central midfield, and he is very much that. Even seeing him for the first time play against another team this past weekend against the Galaxy, it was clear that he helps make Matuidi's job easier, which is so much of what they needed. Because Matuidi now doesn't have to worry so much about the defensive side of things. He can know, like, all right, this Gregore guy, he can go up and down, north, south, east to west. Like, he has range. He's quick, fast. He has range, good ball skills, and he's in the prime of his career. I think he just turned 27, or maybe just turned 28. I think he's 27. So this is a in your prime player, which they have him signed for a while, and even though he may not be 100% match fit, he didn't join the team, I want to say, until maybe like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks before the season started. Obviously, had to go through the quarantine period with international travel. He looked good. I like what he could bring to the team. That's the biggest sign to me. Even before you get to like the Shawcrosses or the Kelvin Leardams or the Jovan Joneses of it all, or all the academy kids. That signing to me is like the one where it's like, all right, this is what we needed. This is the guy we needed. And his signing alone makes it a very important offseason for them. Significant, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree. Look, everybody wants attacking players. It's us Philadelphia Union fans. We've been calling for it, I feel like, for so many years. And look, the Philadelphia Union announced today that they traded with Sporting Kansas City for a international spot. And it was reported that the Union loaned out Matuidi, who I talked about last episode, that Jim Curtin mentioned in his press conference that we're working with details, and I can't really announce where he's getting loaned to. Well, it was announced that he's loaned to the Philadelphia Union 2, which is so weird to me because they don't play in a league. So how can you loan a player to somebody who's not in a league? But somehow it's got approved by MLS, and now the Union have another international roster spot to go out and sign an international player. Ernst Turner, the sporting director, has been hinting at the last couple weeks. If they make a signing, it's probably going to be a number 9, a striker. So I've got to imagine a striker is probably coming in here soon. Something's probably pretty close to being done, because if it wasn't, then I feel like the Union wouldn't have went out and made this trade with Sporting Kansas City. And like Khobi said, we're recording this episode Wednesday night, so when you guys are hearing this episode on Thursday, that's when Jim Curtin is doing his press conference. So like, it does suck, right? That I don't know everything that Jim Curtin's saying in his press conference, because I got the email that said, yeah, Jim Curtin's press conference is at 12:30 tomorrow. And well, it's not Thursday when we're recording this, so we can only speculate, and I'm sure it's probably the same for Inter Miami. But
yeah, they have their availability tomorrow as well.
There we go. So I feel like that's probably standard for MLS. 2 days before a game, they have media availability. And so Khobi and I can't give you... Yeah. So Khobi and I can't give you guys the latest info, but that's all good. But moving on to Saturday's game against Inter Miami, the Union, they played 2 very, very good games last season against Inter Miami, winning both of them. Once in MLS's back and once in Philadelphia last game. Both games, like I said, the Union won. Now, the game I do want to talk about is the game that was played in Philadelphia last year, which the Union won 3-0. That was Higuain's first game for Inter Miami. People were speculating, is he going to be able to play or not? Are they able to get him in here in time? Well, he did play in that game, had a penalty, missed it. Had a bicycle kick in that game, too, if people remember that. Came pretty close scoring that. So it's like, okay, but Higuain might have something still left in his tank. But look, the scoreline, in my opinion, didn't do Inter Miami any justice in that game, because I went back and looked at the stats and everything, and for most parts in the game, Inter Miami were the dominant team. They led in possession, they led on shots. They just couldn't finish any of those shots, and that's why they went out. Like you said, Robbie Robinson wasn't great as a center forward, so they go out and get Higuain to finish some of those chances that the midfielders are creating for them, and Higuain wasn't able to tuck away his penalty and tuck away that bicycle kick, which, look, you got to give that guy some slack, because bicycle kicks, how many players score that? Like, everybody dreams of scoring a bicycle kick goal. In his debut, he came very, very close. They forced some saves out of Andre Blake, and the Union were able to hit Inter Miami on the counterattack. So I am expecting a very, very good game between these two teams. Like I said, don't really know what the starting lineup is going to be. I know Jim Curtin said last week that El Senior and Corey Burke were going to be practicing with the Union at the start of this week, which they are practicing. Neither one of those guys are going to start. I feel like, depending on how match fit they are, they could potentially be on the bench. And I was thinking about this a lot, and I think I mentioned it last episode. Honestly, Sergio Santos is still coming back from a injury to his toe. I feel like he might go 45 minutes this game, whether it's I feel like it's probably going to be a start, because Anthony Fontana, he is definitely more of a 10 than he is a striker, and all credit to Anthony Fontana as playing as a striker. He's just not a striker. He's more natural in the number 10 role, where he can create and take these long distance shots, and he gave it his best, but I don't think striker is the career path that Anthony should be taking. So for a Union lineup perspective, I think it's probably going to be Kasper Schmeichel, Sergio Santos up top, Jamiro Montero as the number 10. I think it's going to be Leon Flock, who's been playing outstanding the last 3 games for the Union on the left side of the diamond. On the right side, you have Alibdoria, the captain. At the 6, you have Jose Martinez, and then the back line, Kai Wagner, left back, Jacob Blesnes, Jack Elliott, 2 center backs, and then Mbizer as the right back, and Andre Blake, of course, as the goalkeeper. But the thing for the Union against Columbus, Jim Curtin said in his post-game press conference, our defense is all on the bench. We have no attacking options on the bench because those guys are out injured. And so I am hoping that El Senio and Corey Burke do get included to the bench. Now, hopefully we don't need them like we needed, because like the Union could have won against Columbus. They had chances, just tired legs, like you said. And that's going to be the case for a lot of these teams, where a lot of teams didn't play preseason games because of COVID issues. The Union obviously had 2 games in the Champions League. They started preseason earlier than most teams, so they're a little bit farther ahead than, let's say, Inter Miami or a lot of other teams in MLS. But for the Union, hopefully they don't need the depth on the bench with El Senio and Corey Burke, but I do expect at least one of those guys to be on the bench. But the starting lineup I gave you guys is the starting lineup I expect to happen. What are we looking for in terms of a potential lineup for Inter Miami?
I expect Inter Miami to go with the same stars they had against the Galaxy. McCarthy in goal. You have Nico Figal and Leandro Gonzalez-Pires as your center backs. And this is a 4-2-3-1 formation. Kelvin Learman and Jovan Jones as your fullbacks, Learman on the right, Jones on the left. You have Gregore as your number 6. You have Matuidi as your number 8. You have Robinson on the left, Robbie Robinson on the left wing, Lewis Morgan on the right wing, Pizarro as the number. He's lining up and wearing the number 10, but even though he may not play as a traditional number 10, but for all intents and purposes of the formation, he's the number 10 with Gonzalo Higuain at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that is the one player that scares me out of every single player on Inter Miami is Pizarro, because he's in the prime of his career. We saw him last season score against the Union when the Union played them in MLS's back. This is arguably the best player for Inter Miami. The guy is still playing for the Mexican national team. The dude creates, and a lot of times he'll take double teams to take the ball back from him. So I will be curious to see how the Union do at taking Pizarro out of the game. But at the same time, too, Higuain, all he needs is one chance, and he can put it in the back of the net. And especially, look, this is one thing I think MLS fans, Junior fans are forgetting about. Is, look, we saw this with Andrew Wooten when we brought him in 2019 during the summer, which is when you guys brought in Higuain. How many times have we seen an MLS player come in midway through the season where these guys are coming from Europe where, okay, look, now they've been playing for a whole year and everything. This is when they're supposed to have their vacation with their family, recover, rest with their bodies. And nope, they're going straight into a mid-season. And it's like, man, like I have no break for my body. And look, we saw this with Andrew Wooten. He had the same issues. It took him a while and he never did get started with Philadelphia Union, but he struggled a lot in his first half of the season with the Union when he came in the summer. And I think Higuain probably had some of those issues as well, coming in mid-season when the league's coming thick and fast. And he was probably expecting some rest, and he did not get it when he came to Inter Miami, because as soon as they signed him, he's going straight into that lineup. And that's a lot on a guy, especially a guy who's, going towards the tail end of his career. But now Higuain had a full off season to rest. Higuain could potentially be a scary player, because I still think that something is left in those boots. And hopefully it doesn't happen against the Union this weekend.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, the quality is definitely still there. You can see it in the practices. You can see it in practices. You can see it a little bit in games when he gets the ball at his feet. The quality is very much still there. It's about sometimes the energy, just how much the stamina. Sometimes at that point, a key for Miami is going to be how much can they provide service for Higuain more towards the box. Because what we saw a little bit last year, even a lot, maybe not a lot, a good amount in the Galaxy game, it's a lot of Higuain dropping back, trying to get the ball, dropping deeper into the formation. Which one of the qualities I found redeeming about him is that he is a very good passer. You can serve other guys well, but you want them to serve him, not the opposite. You want him to be in the dangerous box towards the box. So when I'm looking at Inter Miami, that's going to be a key. Can they? I guess we're going to the keys of the match for Inter Miami on my side. They serve Higuain. Are they going to provide pressure? Are they going to press? Because they talked about trying to do pressing throughout the offseason. They didn't really do that against the Galaxy. And how will substitutions be made in that kind of coincides with we'll be able to keep that same energy throughout the match, and then also with the energy, be less careless with the ball, not see possession as much carelessly because they have guys with fresh legs or guys who are a little bit more fit than they were last game.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go ahead and give cues to the game because I totally forgot to do this with Chris Durham when I had him on to preview the Columbus game. Look, I think the Union got to continue to press. They've got to continue to play out of the back. I know Columbus Crew, they shut that down, and I am curious to see how much Inter Miami are going to be able to press and have the Union not be able to play out of the back, because Columbus did a good job last game with Zardes and Zelarayan pressing Jacob Glesnes and Jack Elliott, where those guys would have to pass the ball back to Andre Blake. And now Andre Blake's kicking the ball all the way up the field, and hopefully Kasper Schmelker is winning that 50-50 ball. Then the Union can go on the attack. Didn't work out all that well. And look, you're a professional soccer team. People will go back and they're going to watch that tape. Now, granted, look, obviously, like, the key to beating the Union is press their back line. Don't let them play out of the back. But how many teams can do what Columbus did? So we will see, look, can Higuain really press as much as Phil Neville might want them to? Can Pizarro press as much as Phil Neville wants him to? But that is one key I think a lot of teams are going to look at. Look, don't let the Union play out of the back. They love beating us by playing out of the back. As soon as an attack breaks down, they're constantly looking for that ball to play Jose Martinez to spring one of our forwards on the counterattack. So I will be curious to see how much of a press Inter Miami presses against the Union. And then the Union, they've got to finish their chances. They created a lot of chances against Columbus. Couldn't put anything away. And look, I feel like for every single team, like you were saying about Inter Miami, don't have Higuain drop deep to the midfield. You never want your strikers dropping that deep because you want those players getting the service. So the Union can't have Kasper, can't have Anthony Fontana if he does play striker. I hope he doesn't. Those guys can't drop deep to the halfway line collecting the ball. They need to be farther up the field so they can get the service into the box, and hopefully the Union will be able to finish those chances. My prediction for this game, the Union, they've kept 3 straight clean sheets, but Pizarro, like I said, I am worried about him. I do think he'll nick one for Inter Miami. I think the score will be 2-1 Philadelphia Union. They were undefeated last season at home, beat Inter Miami twice last season, but I do think Miami will end the shutout streak for the Union this season.
Ooh, that's a good. I'm keep going back and forth between 2-1 Union or 1-1 draw. Since you said 2-1, I'm going to say 1-1 draw, just so I can be different. It's hard to see me. I'm completely honest. It's hard to see me for me to see Inter Miami walking into Subaru Park and taking away 3 points. That just doesn't happen in Subaru, or just hasn't happened for a while. I do think they'll be able to get a score. They look a little bit more not just confident, but a little bit more sure of themselves in terms of their ideals and their philosophies in the attack. I think that will come to fruition in the terms of a goal. I also do think there's going to be a breakdown, so that's why I think Philadelphia is going to get at least 1 goal. But yeah, I did want to ask you about this. What do you think of? Because you're talking about the pressing.
Yeah.
Like I said, Miami didn't press as much as it seemed like they wanted to against Galaxy. And that may have been more of a fatigue legs thing. Because when they do press, it's going to be both Gonzalo and Pizarro pressing, so it's almost like a 4-4-2 formation. What I want to ask you is, what do you think of Philly's attack? Just, I guess, how dangerous? Because I didn't get to watch the Columbus match.
Yeah, definitely.
So how dangerous? What would you say about them?
Look. Anthony Fontana is not a striker, and I hope he isn't. Him and Kasper, the chemistry is not there, right? The Union have been playing and they always play this way with Kai Wagner, the left back, going up the left flank, sending in crosses into the box. But now with Mbaizo, last year, Ray Gaddis, who was our right back, retired this season, he was offensively challenged and wouldn't push up as far as Union fans would like him to. And Mbaizo is just like Kai Wagner in terms of pushing forward, maybe not as good defensively, but he has no problems pushing up just like Kai Wagner does on the left. And what we've seen early on for the Union is they're putting a lot of crosses in the box for Kasper Schmelker. And he's had 2 goals in 3 games. Both of those goals have been headers, one from a corner kick, one from Mbaizo running down the right side of the field. So I do think the Union are going to continue playing that way, especially when they have 2 very good fullbacks that are able to get forward, put good delivery into the box. We've seen Jamiro Montero take shots from distance, and I've been a big complainer of his, saying, look, I don't think he has the strongest shots from outside the box. I think he's more of, if he's going to shoot, he shoot from inside the box. But for whatever reason, he trusts himself. And look, I'm all for a player trusting themselves that they believe they have him in the locker room. Go for it. But just watching Jamiro take shot after shot outside of the box, it doesn't happen for him. So the Union are definitely going to be attacking from the flanks. That's the way they attack. They don't really attack through the middle. If Miami fails to clear a ball or whatever, I can see the Union scoring a goal from the middle of the field. But honestly, if the Union are scoring a goal this game, it's coming from either the left back or the right back, and Mbaizo and Kai Wagner sending in a box. And the other thing is, too, we've complained about the Union service on set pieces and corner kicks a lot over the years. It's like, it got so bad in 2019 that the Union were like, yeah, we're just going to play the ball short every time off of corner kicks, because they weren't getting any good service into the box. And it's like, okay, look, obviously kicking it short's not working either. You might as well just kick the ball out for a goal kick, because we are not good at corner kicks. But we've seen earlier on that the Union are actually getting good delivery into the box for set pieces, for corner kicks. They have a lot of tall players in Jacob Glesnes, Jack Elliott, Kasper Shabelko, Leon Flock. All of those guys are over 6 foot. So it's a lot of tall heads that aim for in the box, and I don't see why the Union would change that attacking ways. If it's working so far this season, they're going to keep attacking down the flanks. But I don't expect any goals coming straight down the middle for the Union.
Got it. Interesting. All right. Appreciate that. That's scouting report right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now watch everything I just told you go completely against what I said. Like, oh, great, you finally attacked through the middle, Philadelphia Union. They're a very good attacking team on the counterattack, but we haven't seen too many counterattacks this season from the Union. It's just been playing out of the back, sending Kai Wagner and Mbaizo down the flanks, giving them the ball, and Kasper's in the middle, cross it to him, hope that he wins a header, and hopefully there's a goal. But Khobi, it's been a blast having you onto the podcast. Like I said, yeah, I could have went on Wikipedia, read a couple articles, sounded like I knew what I was talking about, but it's always a blast just bringing on other journalists, play-by-play directors. But where can people find you on Twitter if they're not following you?
Yeah, you can find me at KHOBI_PRICE on Twitter, Khobi Price. You can find my work at the South Florida Sun Sentinal. Check out Inter Miami Insider on Twitter. That's where you'll find pretty much every single published work about Inter Miami from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. And yeah, just follow along. This season should be, if they're not going to be successful, they should at least be entertaining to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if that LA Galaxy game's anything to go by, definitely are entertaining. But for all you guys listening, if you're still not following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod. Check out the website, thefreekickpodcast.com. Wherever you get your podcasts, The Free Kick, Todd Lewis. And let's hope that we don't get a boring nil-nil game like we had against Columbus. Hopefully we see some goals in this game. There is also reports that it could potentially rain, because we all know, Union fans, it always rains in Chester. So we'll see. If it really does rain, it should be a little bit colder, especially. It definitely won't be like it is down in Florida, but hopefully we see some goals. Hopefully the Union win. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is The Free Kick Podcast.